I'm going to share my screen. Um, so the subject of today's lecture is going to be Angular routing. So guys, when you were implementing your React task, did you use routing for handling the application state? Don't like. Just a second, please, guys. I don't like what I see. So you might be already familiar with the concept of single page application, do you? Yes, so let's refresh our knowledge on this topic. So maybe what we do, what kind of alternative do we have to compare with a single page application with routing? What can we do to, if we, for instance, don't want to use routing, we could implement our application by hiding and showing components on the page, maybe using ngIf directive or maybe with hidden attribute. So in this case, we would have the same URL in our address bar all the time. If we would want to use this kind of approach, we might encounter with some problems like when we refresh our page. It will reset our application to the start, to the initial state. We won't be able to save some maybe data or that we would load while using our application. Also, if we would not use routing for our app, we cannot bookmark our position in the application and come back later and maybe save this exact position, this exact state. And also we won't be able to send links to other people, so they, if in case if we want to share some content or if you would like for them to see the same state as we can access in this application. So when we use our URL, we can in save the particular state and then come back to it later. So as you know, Angular allows us to build those single page. I'm sorry, I don't have a second monitor, so I'm gonna look over the chat. Working remotely, have some problem with that. Angular with its functionality allows us to build a single page application. And for instance, when we how the site was implemented before with server-side rendering, server-side routing, when you change URL in your browser, so browser make a request and the server should return some HTML back for every view on the URL. When the URL change, new view comes in a new HTML document. What we will be able to implement with Angular, it's called client-side routing is very similar to React's one. So when we change our URL in the browser, we want our application to handle this change without help of the server. What can you maybe what kind of advantages this approach might give to your application based on your React experience? What could you name maybe? Uh, or maybe there's no difference between old approach with sending lots of documents and handling this logic on a front-end side. Have no ideas? Yes, that's a very good one. It makes application our user experience more smooth and faster because we didn't have to just reload, parse the document every time some information or state have changed. So also uh, very similar to this case, also we can make our less bandwidth required, so we won't have to change send the big HTML every time we have some changes. We just send one file index.html and allow our application to do build the building of the page itself. It's what will improve the user experience and the time the page are um, fetched from the server. It's also very convenient from the perspective of we don't have to involve so much backend effort, but so we will need more front-end developers as we hear. We will have work, so it's good for us. So let's begin with an example. Okay. What we have with on this image? This is a scheme of the layout. So as you can see, we have header, menu, and footer. These parts of the application won't be changed throughout browsing between different views, but there is some kind of container router outlet that will be dynamically filled with some content. Uh, for instance, we in our application we can have different numbers of router outlets. For instance, we have our app component. We have router outlet here, and it have two nest, two case. I don't know, two routes that are going to be rendered depending on the URL, and after we add some we will be redirected to route 2. We can choose between in the different router outlet. We can go to another two child elements of this route, so we can nest one router to another to extend the URL with different segments. So in Angular, to set up routing, we have a routing module built in and provided by Angular with some built-in functionality. So as you can see here in our app module, we import from Angular bundle router module, and here for the app we use forward static message that can help us to provide our router model to be visible to all the application, and also we can use we can inject routing to sorry I'm sorry. So as you can see, to this for root method, we can pass the configuration object or the configuration array. The configuration array is an array of routes. Every route is an object with several properties. For basic configuration, it should be paths that are extension for our main path. For instance, if we use development server in Angular, it's localhost 42020, and after it's going to be added some slash and crisis center after the slash, and for this URL our application is going to render this component. What is interesting here, so we not only can use our paths that are static and cannot be changed, we also can use dynamic your can create dynamic URL with using semicolon, and we can pass, for instance, any string here. For instance, it's very popular when we have IDs for any, I don't know, to-dos list, or maybe movies. I'm not sure, I don't remember what exactly kind of application is in your task, but I'm pretty sure this kind of functionality you will be implementing. For instance, some card for a specific item. So here we set up our very popular for to make our application more structured, separate our configuration of the routing to the routing module, and mm, then import it's to the our app route. We just use import here, and our routing is going to be set up for all the application. So, usage. I'm sorry, just a second. Here we are going to look on the example of usage of Angular routing. Here we have our routing module, and as you can see, we have our our routes. So at the very beginning, we have the object that has little different properties from the one in the example. So if we have this kind of route, basic route that matches to the empty string, our application is going to redirect us to the localhost 4200 to this route, and then we are going to render this component, homepage component. So here we have this. So for the very first, I don't know, routing item that we are going to look after, it's the router outlet directive. It's available from the router library that we are imported earlier, and it's the part of our layout where the router inserts the component that gets matched based on the current browser URL. So we can add multiple outlets in our application, as I mentioned before. So we can implement advanced routing scenarios. So this is kind of like that's what we are writing in our HTML and app component, and that's what's Angular doing with our application. What's he inserted text of the component we specified in our configuration object. Navigation in Angular are implemented with this directive. In a standard, if you want to implement link in with a standard HTML5 tag, we would use a tag with href attribute. In Angular, we use this directive, and it makes that initiates navigation to a road. Navigators opens. Guys, is the connection okay? It just keep sending me warnings. Okay. Um. So as you can see, we also, so router link directive, we pass here a simple string, and when we click on this element, we are going to be redirected to this particular URL. Also, we have here a directive router link active. It's directive that it tracks whether the linked route of element, this one, is currently active, and it allows us to specify one or more CSS classes that are going to be applied to this element when the route is active. For instance, here it's an active class. It might be a no color or whatever you want. So also for router link directive, we can bind it and pass some complex URL for to pass some maybe combined URL. We will use its expects an array of strings. For instance, we can pass some variable. It's for generating like ID or generating our URL on the fly. So to bind, when we are binding our router link directive, it's better to pass an array, because otherwise it's going to fall. Navigation for a component. Also, sometimes we would like to navigate maybe not from our HTML, and we would like to, for instance, after some event happens, we want to navigate our user to different location. So we use this injectable dependence with injected dependency, which has router navigate method. We will pass here. This method also expects an array of strings, which from those strings, the Angular is going to form the URL, or we might want to use a string without any complicated combinations. So for those cases, we would like to use navigate by URL method. So also I forgot to mention that why would we use here as some kind of directive when we have our built-in href attribute. So href attribute under the hood, it's always going to reload our page after we click the link, but we don't want our page to be reloaded. We just want to components to be built. We don't want to lose all the data. We just want to our redirection be handled by Angular, not with native browser functionality. It can might lead to some bugs when working, particularly with Angular. So navigation from component to methods. Also, we one can access some property of our routing status with another injectable with activated route. It has we can find out a lot of information, for instance, current route or params, or maybe the configuration that was passed to the routing module, and but basic ones that you might want to use in for this moment, for just for learning, it's we can find out we can use short road snapshot params, or we can just use this example. Second. For instance, here we have it's not an example. Just a second. Road params and snapshot params, and it's different. For instance, is this for snapshot, it's just a property, it's a getter. It returns for instance here params parameters that was passed for username. If we want to use a snapshot object, it's not going to be an observable on which we can subscribe, and later and if something will change in our road, we can track those changes by subscribing on this observable. Observables are going to be covered in the next lecture, so we won't go deep on this one, but it helps observable. It's an object, or it's not an object. It's kind of like an implementation of handling data flows in just this. Um, it's to me, it's like I have a bad internet connection. It's trying to die every couple of minutes. So observable, it's a stream of data, so we can observe those changes that are come from some source by subscribing on this observable, and every time something is going to change in source, we are going to be notified about those changes. So now we are going to look over the demo. So it's here. So, mm, so for instance, very first example, we're going to take a look our directive. So here we have our router link directive. We pass here an array with a string home, and mm, so you can see when we click on this link, redirect us to this URL. So the next example, for instance, if we not just pass one um, element of the array, we pass our an array with two elements, and also, as you can see, we use this active class to track what exact link are fired now and used for navigation. For instance, we click here. Mhm. Okay. Some else. Our home, our simple. That's our user link. So as you can see, we our buttons get highlighted when we are redirected to this particular route, and also we can see how we can use our routing inside um, our component, not just in HTML. For instance, we have mm, go to user page, and we use here navigate method of our router, and we pass here user as a first element in our array. It's a static string, and here we can pass some imaginable, for instance, here the user ID that can change over the application over the run of the application, and we are going to be redirected to this exact route. For instance, if we would change this path, it would to the user page. Also here an interesting in this example, we can see if we have similar so this is the way we can fire our navigation from the component itself. Uh, just a second. The next subject I would like to cover is lazy loading. Have you familiar with this concept from React with lazy loading? D- Oh, not from. I'm sorry, I forgot. Jesus. I forgot to show you one important thing about the module. Here we have our in every application we want to prevent our user from entering some random path and to we want to improve the user experience if in case if it's the user just not going to write click the buttons to navigate through the application, but he also wants to enter the URL with hand into the URL bar. And for instance, if our user are going to write something random, for instance, just random numbers, we want to have a fallback for this. And in the end of our, in the very bottom of our configuration object array, in our, we would like use two wildcards, and everything that is not going to match words that are written before this object. It's for every road, unmatched road, our application are going to redirect us to the not found component. For instance, in this application, it's going to be, oh, just a sorry, it's not like this. So for those cases, we are going to have 404, but it's very important to add this object in the end of the our configuration, because in it's have different weights. So if we would want to add it in the beginning, so everything that are our match the Angular's matching mechanism is going to find those wildcards and will redirect our user every to the not found component every time it's get loaded. So the порядок, how is this in English? The it's important where to write, where exactly to put this file with this object. Order. Thank you. Where are my tools just today? So lazy loading for people who are not familiar with the concept. We sometimes we don't want to use. We don't want to use all the, I don't know, big. We want to split our application into small chunks. For instance, if we have like admin page or maybe a views that not all the users are going to see and I'm going to need. And for those cases, we would like to implement lazy loading. So when the user are going to click some link or trying to access particular road, it's going to be loaded only on demand. For instance, here, oh, so here we are I didn't mention, as a recent in Angular, we have very, you know, well supported in CLI functionality, so we can generate our modules with running this ng generate module, the name of the module, and we can generate our routing. So it's going to look like this. So we have our routes for generated for child. It should be for root here because it's our, we want to for this module to be used in all of the application. So after we generate usage, we when we pass our routes to the no, I'm sorry guys, I misspoke here. For the feature module, we want to use for child. We don't want our router with our routes to be visible for all the applications. So we use here static method for child, and we pass here the configuration array, and in the application in our parent, the biggest routing model, we would use this kind of object for our feature module. For instance, is name of the path, and we would use property load children and import this part of the application uh, to our app module. For it's an example of the roads that are going to be added when our feature model is going to be um, uh, downloaded. It's here in a good, we can use good example. For instance, we have when we browse between the like when we browse in our application between different routes. As you can see, we don't have any changes in our network tab. Nothing is getting downloaded. But when we click on a lazy loaded link, as you can see, this part, this bundle is downloaded, and here we can look over the implementation. So here in our app module. So this how it should looks like in application presentation. Load children. So every time when we when this road are entered in the URL bar, or we click on a link, so our application is trying to download these modules that are generated by Angular, and here we have a small the configuration of our module. So here we have just very simple empty road, and the component we should render when we have this empty road that are added on the top of the basic road. We have here our basic road, localhost 4050, and then lazy loaded added to the road from the routing application. So choose so also, I would like to mention that, for instance, here can be some problem with our some here problem just when we use our router link active, it's might be uh was pass. For instance, we pass to router link in those two cases a very similar URL, but it's the second one little longer. But as you can see, when we for instance, it's not when we configure our routing just like that, just passing to the router link active one class and to the router link directive just an array from of strings from which ones are going our URL is going to be combined. So it's going to look over the first part to the first slash of the link and our buttons or links are going to be both highlighted because this router link are looking only for the first element of the array. To fix this kind of a problem, so we won't get confused by our position in the application. We would use this kind of like directive router link active options, and we can add an object with the property exact set it to true. In this case, our router link active class is going to be attached to our element only in case when our path matches fully, not just by small part by the parts. So in our now we can see not both of the tabs are highlighted, not tabs, but just I don't know navigation pieces. How breadcrumbs? How do people call those ones? We just wanna for our uh, buttons to be highlighted only in the case of full path match. So also in Angular we have guards. It's very interesting. Guards are in Angular are implemented as services that need to be provided. Those are typically created with injectable classes, injectable decorators as classes. So guards um, mm, 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 we can pass, as you can see here, we have our configuration array. And for our admin pass, for instance, we don't want every user to be able to look uh, and use our admin part of the application. We want to restrict a number of people who is going to be able to see this component, this road. So we can pass, we can add a property canActivate, and it takes and assign to it an array with guards. Guards is as you can see, guards it's a class that implemented a specific interface. There's several different interfaces that can be used in Angular. It's types of guards that are implementing specific interface. It's canActivate interface checks to see if a user can visit a route. It's canActivate child. I might not mention it's enough, but we can also, when we form our configuration, we can We can also set children. So it's like we are setting nested childs of our road to, for instance, for this parent uh, row for this component, the path is going to look like localhost. Here I have a slightly different because mine is taken. So we have parent here, and when we are redirected here, we have there are two channels, right and left. Well, here's an example. For instance, we have our parent, your segment of the URL, and we immediately get redirected to the left tab. So here, right tab, it just adds up to the parent component or to the parent URL piece of the just the parent URL piece. It's very convenient for creating some nested layout. For instance, if we want to build some kind of like complicated views. So also so canActivate guard, check if user can visit a road, canActivate child. That's why I get back to child's checks if to see if user can visit a road's children, can deactivate, check to see if a user can exit a road. For instance, it can be very convenient if we have some kind of like form in our page and we don't want our user to leave the page before he, for instance, submitted the road and maybe saved the changes he made to this page. So we would like to do not allow him to leave the page without, for instance, confirming or something. Also, we have resolve. Guards performs row data retrieval before road activation, and also can load guard. It we can use it to check if user can route to a module that are lazy loaded. For instance, if our admin page are lazy loaded, we would like to use a guard before loaded and check whether or not this user are can perform the redirection to this particular route. So canActivate guard has method canActivate, and it's supposed to return true or false, or maybe it's observable. It's to more advanced features, you might want to look over the documentation. So in a very simple scenario, guard return as true if user can access the road, in this case when it can activate, or false if they can't. So can load overlays loaded module, can activate and can load, and so we can in our one guard implement two interfaces, and whether it's our Angular are going to look over and find out whether this module is lazy loaded or not, and fire appropriate method of the guard. So, guys, is everything clear? Oh, like always, no and yes. Maybe I make you more confused than you were before this lecture. What's not clear? Maybe we can take a look to this one more time. So it's like when you, okay, simple. Yes, it's mm, so okay. For instance, we have like here admin page. So I don't want everyone to access this page. So here, configuration object for admin route. So we have a property that are we are assigning to this property an array, and it's array with os guard. Here, this implementation of the guard, for instance, it's very simple. It's return an observable boolean. It can just return boolean. It's not necessary. Just for хотя здесь here with or sign, but to make it more simple, we just use boolean here. So this, class with a method that are going to be fired every time the user will try to access this road. So every time we are trying to redirect here, our Angular and the hood are going to use this method, and here it's always returned false. So if we're going to try, we just can. I'm clicking on the link, and we have a console log, this log. So every time we click the link here, the link admin, uh, our guard are not going to allow us to go here. For instance, if I will do this, it's always going to return true. In this case, we can. Admin page works. So for instance, in here in this guard, we can, I don't know, we can access our local storage and check for some credential, or some authorization logic can be implemented from this guard. Or maybe we are going to check some rights that a user have or something like that, whether he is logged in or not, for instance. Is this word is a pattern is not which often used to prevent some from like log. Like from where? Yes, I think it's pattern locked in the yeah. Yes, it's like locks for if you have key. So now is the guards are less frightening, less confusing. How we should implement? Um, does someone have a link to the task? I need to go and search for it because thank you. Maybe should not just go to look. So here we need to climb up. For form page, detailed information page. Coding was as much nicely. Short module. Function requirements. Sure. As lazy loading should be implemented. Is lazy loading clear? It's very simple. You just specified one pass, make write down. It's easy peasy. Pages it used in auto configuration. Login page with login should prevent him. Oh yes, when the user isn't logged in, the app should prevent from navigating to any pages other than the login page. This is already a route required would be helpful to implement such a behavior. So this, the classic kind of like case where when we should use our canActivate routes. So you have your user, you redirect him from the as we used in our configuration file from the empty path. When you just first time load your application, you redirect the user strictly to the login page, and in like here can be login page, and for this login page you're going to be implementing this auth guard, so you won't be allow your user to go to other routes except from login, as long as he is not logged in. So when he's logged in, you store your tokens or whatever you store in a username in your, for instance, local storage, and you can then allow your user to go to all those interesting views you have in the application. Yes, you should. Okay. So guys, is everything clear now? It's again, it's a matter of practice. I'm going to share just now. Just guys, just please. I shared with you, if I'm not mistaken. I'm going to share also an example. I have done. I've done it last time. I I sent the link. Like it is. What exactly is not clear? I don't know. It's clear. Joking with me. I'm getting nervous. Give us my. So guys, if everything is clear, we can kind of like wrap up. But in case maybe maybe you will have some questions, I can share with you my, I don't know, Telegram, Telegu, пошарить. I can share, and you, if you want, you can write me. Is this going to be okay? The silence is like yes to me. It sounds like yes to me. Okay, so now finishing. I'm going to link here an example and my contacts, and so have a nice day. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your patience. Yes, thank you for patience. So have a nice night. Bye.